I might be able to help you. We're kind of back. We weren't on this morning because I did an early morning interview with Dr. Antoine Brett about science, faith, and the Big Bang. If you want to see that, you could go to our show. Peyton is destroying a box. Should I show him this? Let's see. Let me go to this one. So Church Without Walls, if you haven't noticed, do you want to talk about this yet or not really? Peyton didn't plan her artwork this morning.
At all.
So she grabbed a box out of
Last Resort.
Mm-hmm. Looks kind of neat. So we'll do an unboxing as we're talking to you today. We're a little giddy this morning because it's the first time we've been on the air in like 5 or 6 weeks. We've been following the Kirkwood saga. We've been out of our house for about 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, because there was a water predicament, and the guys had to move us out of the house and redo all our floors and move us back in. So currently we have 100 boxes. We had 140. Currently we have 100 boxes stacked up in the house still to go through. But we are back in the house, and so we're back in Church Without Walls. We hope you haven't forgot about us. We hope you've had a wonderful, productive, fulfilling time while we were gone. And we just wanted to get on today for about 15 minutes just to say we're still alive, we're okay, we're back, and we plan on being on every week. So today, we didn't really have anything set aside to talk to you, but I had a weird dream last night. And one of the people in the dream, who was my son in the dream, wasn't my real son, but he had been an employee of mine from like 30 years ago when I was a part owner in a Subway sandwich shop. And this fellow named Scott, who worked for me, was in my dream last night. And it just was so strange because I haven't had an opportunity to think about this kid who's now a man. I mean, now he's probably 46 years old. How weird is that? Because it's been 30 years. And he was my son in this dream, a strange dream. But then we were on our walk just about 15 minutes ago. Don't you love the sound of crinkling plastic?
Okay. It's your
Smells
fault.
like Christmas.
You didn't give me any heads up. So this is my last resort. And it's all in plastic. Okay.
I'm sure that's pleasing to your ears. Next up, we're going to scratch our nails on a chalkboard. No, go ahead. Do what you need to do.
Okay.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah,
You're going to paint that one?
Sure.
All right. So, and people are probably wondering, what happened to the bar behind us? Why is there a freezer behind us? That's our son's cold plunge cooler. Lesson for another day. But anyway, as we were walking about 15, 20 minutes ago, we walked past a neighbor's backyard who was indulging in a pipe. And wafting, aromafine, is aromafine a word? The aroma filled the whole neighborhood, and it was just such a delight to smell pipe tobacco. Now, I'm a cigar smoker. It doesn't smell good. But pipe tobacco is like incense. It's just a lovely smell. And I instantly went back to when I was 6 years old in the living room of my Uncle Arliss, who was this kind of a sailor trucker type individual with full arm tattoos, and he was just if I can say this, a gorgeous human being. He was a man who was tender to children. Who no one paid attention to children back then, and Uncle Arliss did. He'd give us all a 50-cent piece when we walked in the house, and he'd talk to us and he'd engage with us, even though the adults said other things. So it was a complete picture of Jesus saying, "Suffer the children to come unto me." That was Uncle Arliss. And to this day, the smell of a particular brand of pipe tobacco takes me back, sitting on Uncle Arliss's lap, listening to his story. And I was just I was enraptured. It was that. And I'm telling this story to Peyton and to Wendy, about my Uncle Arliss and how that smell. Isn't it amazing how a smell or a song, or you know, the flash of somebody walking by in a crowd could just take you back into your past and make you remember something so delightful. And I was thinking, I mentioned this to Wendy, and she said, "Wow, you didn't have many experiences like that with people." You know, I mentioned that he was in our church, and she said, "You didn't have many precious memories like that." And so here's the truth. What I want to talk to you about is enchantment and demon possession. Not really, though. I mean, we're talking about metaphors. Let's just say enchantment and, well, what I want to talk to you about is that there are certain Christians that you know who are enchanted. They seem to be infused with the Spirit of Christ. I mentioned to you, suffer the children to come unto me. This was Uncle Arliss. He was a simple man. He did not have a great depth of Bible understanding, but he knew love, and he knew how to express love and interest, and he was just an amazing person. My mother was another person who was a lot like that. And when you're touched by an angel like that, right? Now, listen, if you're listening, and I know our show invites atheists and agnostics and people on spiritual journeys, either through the indoor or the outdoor, to the table. So I don't want to brush you back with a fastball or anything. What I wanted to say is there are Christians like that, right? But I also wanted to say that there are non-Christians who are like that have that kind of a spirit, that have that kind of an effect on people. And it's truly amazing. It's such an indelible imprint on your life that you never forget it, and just the whiff of pipe tobacco can remind you. I also wanted to say there are Christians who are awful people, and they have the opposite effect on people. As a matter of fact, they're so awful that they soil the name of Christ himself. They've taken the Lord's name in vain in that way. And they make people who are on the outside looking in say, I don't want any part of that brand. You know, I don't even want to consider it as an option, because look at so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. Now, there are people who are non-Christian who are just as toxic. You know, they might be atheists, or they might just be another faith, and they're just as toxic. And I said to Wendy the other day, you know, the truth is, I've met the salt of the earth both within the church and without the church. And I will say, those who are Christ followers, right, who are toxic, who aren't loving, who don't leave that kind of an impression on you, I think they're in the Christian community, and I think they might even have good standing among Christians, and yet they've completely missed the flavor and the spirit of the person they claim to follow. And that's what I wanted to just suggest to you today. When a Christian is off-putting, when a Christian is that way, and granted, even the Bible suggests that this is commonplace. You don't have to look far for this. Christ mentions the elder brother in the field and the Pharisees in Luke 15. Those were the uber religious. Those were the ones who were carrying, as my father used to say, the 30-pound Schofield to Bible study on Wednesdays and Sundays. You know, they were the ones who had all the notes. They'd win the sword drills. They won the Timothy Awards at Awana. You know, they'd be the ones that people would look around and say, wow, I want my daughter, you know, I want him to court my daughter. Or, you know, how many people who lived next to that man's farm would see the young son traipse off to the far country, but they'd see his older brother in the field, you know, night and day. And they'd say, wow, if only the little brother was like his big brother. You know, but it's God who sees the heart. You know, it's God who passed on David's brothers, whom the whole community would have chosen over him. So that's what I'm talking to you about here. You don't have to go very far in the New Testament to find Paul's correction to the churches, where he's writing to the uber religious. He's writing to the Christ followers who've really put a stick in the spokes, right? In some cases, he reprimands them, like in Galatians, says, I should spank you, and or even worse. No, I said that to the Corinthians. To the Galatians, he says, I hope the knife slips at your wrist. So, and I don't have to ask many Americans, have they met a Christian who's, to use the vernacular of the kids, a real Karen. I knew I'd get her attention eventually. Church ladies, Karens, busybodies, legalists, Christian nationalists. The church is filled with off-putting people right now. And if you talk to your average American and you ask them, what does it mean? What does the word Christian mean to you? Oftentimes, if you're not asking somebody who's wearing the team jersey or within the tribe, they're going to start with they're judgmental, they're hypocritical, they're homophobic, they're science deniers, and the list goes on from there. So how do we turn this around? I would just say to you that the answer really is with Peter and walking on the water. If you truly want to walk on the water as your Lord did, you have to be completely occupied with the person and the work of Christ, and not the Bible, because the Bible can say anything you want it to say, and there are places in the Bible that are cruel and ridiculous. And Jesus, if you look closely, confronted some of these. But our authority is not the Bible. Our authority is not the written word. It's the living word of God, manifested in the person of Jesus Christ, who we are told by the written word was the fullness of the Godhead bodily. What would Jesus do is an important question. What did Jesus do, even more important? What did Jesus say? If we can focus on that. Now, again, I'd urge you to be about Jesus and not be about what other men say about Jesus. Many of us put that first. So we'll trot out what John MacArthur, I almost said Abraham Piper, I like Abraham Piper, or John Piper. We trot out a MacArthur or a Piper or Billy Graham and this person and that person. And before he was defrocked, Ravi Zacharias or this Pope or Augustine or Aquinas or no. We've allowed the trees to obstruct us from the forest, or the forest for the trees. And we need to get back to Jesus and see how Jesus lived, not just how he died, but how he lived. So much of the church today is focused solely, when it speaks of Christ, as an argument against atheism. So they focus on the resurrection, and they argue about the resurrection. And what happens when we do that is we miss all of Christ's life and ministry. We missed everything that he wrote in the Gospels. And as somebody who was a former dispensationalist, I could say that was the flavor of dispensationalism. Jesus was a second-class citizen to Paul. Now, we wouldn't say that. We'd say, well, the risen and glorified Christ inspired Pauline doctrine. But we really didn't spend much time with Jesus's words. As a matter of fact, we dismiss those as relics of a previous era. That was just to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, not really to us. And so I think it's a huge mistake to do that. I would remind you once again that I believe all the isms, whether it's Biblicism, Calvinism, dispensationalism, creationism, all of the isms can be traced back to one tree trunk. Those are just branches on one tree trunk. And that is the necessity of modern Christians to make the Bible the inerrant, right, absolute authority. In other words, if God didn't write it, he edited it. So there's no contrary opinions. There's no mistakes. There's no contradictions. It's all for us. Some of it's to us. But you could trust it completely and fully. In other words, all isms lead back to the idea that the Bible has one voice, that it's univocal. And when you find out it's not that, you either lose your faith or you lose your appreciation for the Bible. And the truth is, the Bible doesn't say this about itself. It's clear that there are different authors who disagree in the Bible when you come to it objectively. It's clear that James and Paul didn't agree with each other and, frankly, clashed on a number of occasions. So it's clear that you could find the prosperity gospel in Scripture, and you can find rebuttals to the prosperity gospel in Scripture. Leviticus and Deuteronomy don't agree with Job and some of the Psalms, although they do with some of the Proverbs. Jesus and Paul did not support the argument of the prosperity gospel. And the life and the culture in which Jesus lived believed in the prosperity gospel. And so they also believed that the reason for the second-class citizenship of Judea in that time, the reason they were under the Roman boot and being oppressed, and their economy sucked, and their military was non-existent, and all those bad things in Leviticus 26 were happening, was because their neighbors weren't serious enough about the covenant, the Bible or the covenant or their relationship with God. And it's because they thought their neighbors were sinners, and that was the reason they looked down so much on their neighbors. And this is the reason that much of Christ's ministry was love your neighbor, because they weren't. They couldn't love their neighbor. They were blaming their neighbor. That happens in America today. We've allowed Christian nationalism to displace the gospel. If you ask the typical Christian today what's wrong with the world, they'll tell you it's the liberals, it's the progressives, it's the Muslims, it's the homosexuals. You know, they've got a whole list of people that are the reason that we're not receiving the blessings of Leviticus 26. And it reminds me of whether it's apocryphal or not, the story of G.K. Chesterton, who responded to a query in a British newspaper, what is wrong with the world, by writing them a letter with just one sentence: I am. The average Christian isn't going to give you that answer today. He doesn't see the darkness within, but he's pretty confident that the darkness is all around him. So our shows coming up are going to try and focus more on this positive aspect of what life is like, what it can be like, how it can still be fruitful, and the Bible can still be a beautiful blessing to you if you demote it, if you tear down the idol that we've made out of it, and we don't see it as the fourth member of the Godhead, but we see it as something it actually is, something that's like a river, and we are somebody with panning for gold in that river. The moment you make all of the Bible gold, now you have to defend it all as gold. You have to defend the passages that are misogynistic. You have to defend the patriarchal passages. You have to defend the pro-slavery passages. You have to defend the pro-genocidal passages. You have to defend the passages that make God look no better than Nebuchadnezzar or Nero or ISIS. And that, all of that is a distraction from the person and work of Christ, from the message that God wanted to send through Jesus, which is quite clearly, I love you, son. Come home. Well, that's all I got for today. Oh, that is so cool. Let me go back to that. And then, should I go to the big screen?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. Why don't you tell us what you got there? And remember, we're on this one.
Yep. Let me move my Gatorade. Well, I ran out of time to figure out out what I was gonna do for art.
Okay, this is a cool toy. What I want to know, I'm going back to the screen. I'm sorry. You said you got this when?
A long time ago when I did toy reviews.
So Mom or I bought you this really cool toy, and it's been sitting there for 2 years,
Yeah.
unwrapped.
I forgot about it.
Okay, that's
yeah.
okay.
But
All right.
I made this.
Okay, let me go to the big screen. Go ahead. He's cute.
And-
Does he have a name?
No.
Is it a he? It's probably a she.
I don't know.
Well-
But it's kind of like a alebrije or something.
It's a what?
It's from Spanish. Remember, for the Day of the Dead, they put it on the
Oh.
Yeah, but this toy is you put water, you wash it, and then you color it.
It's a
and then you
mobile
wash it.
dog wash?
Yeah,
I love this.
but I did this little. What is it? I don't know what the breed is, but it's a little dog. Yeah, colored it.
I don't know. Is that a...
Remember, there's
Labradoodle?
like a pug in there that I didn't do.
There's a pug?
Yeah.
Can we see the pug? And maybe you could do it for next week.
Yeah, but.
There's that lovely sound.
Yeah.
I'll put 'em up
that's
here,
why
maybe.
I didn't do it.
Put them up there, and then I'll go big screen.
Just trying to reduce the noise. So
Yeah.
I only did
Okay. Look at that guy.
one.
Yeah. All right. You got anything to say, Poe?
Not really.
Wasn't that pipe tobacco amazing?
Oh, that was, yeah.
All right, folks. It's good to be back. I know this was a short one. We love you all. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. And we'll be on earlier next week. That was my fault.
Yeah.
I let Peyton sleep, and I did an interview.
Slept in.
All right. See you next week.